Hello and welcome to the guest portion of DC Figures and Collectibles. Tyler back with you as well as Scott. And we are very honored to have on DCAU Review. They are a brother duo, Cal and Liam. And you can find them at Instagram at DCAU. And I'll flip the camera right now and show you their page. If I can press the right button. Here we go. And they keep you up to date on all news, and especially this past week, there's a lot of up-to-date DCAU news. They also let you know, of course, when they have a new episode, and it's just you can tell by listening to them that they have a passion for what they do. And as a Batman fan myself and a Batman animated series fan, I really enjoy listening to them go into review about any episode. And their most recent one was "If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich?" which of course is a classic Riddler episode. And it's always just fun to hear other fans' take on anything Batman animated series. So without further ado, I want to allow them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their influences growing up. And I could tell one of them is the animated series, of course, but I want to see if that was the first and only one, or if there were many others on top of that. So take it away, guys.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. First of all, thank you guys for having us on. It's an honor to be on the podcast with you guys. To say that this is our very first interview that we've ever done together as a podcast. So we are very, very honored. So I'll speak first for me. So I'm Cal. I'm 4 years older than Liam, and I was 4 years old when Batman the Animated Series debuted. So Batman the Animated Series was a huge part of me growing up. I can remember the very first time my dad brought home the original Kenner. The combat belt Batman figure, and man, I think I got it for it must have been either my 4th or my 5th birthday, and it sounds cliche, but that's started my love of Batman, and of course being able to flip on terrestrial TV. We didn't have cable growing up, so we had a very limited amount of channels to watch. Being able to flip something on and watch Batman, and of course, my dad started buying us the Batman Adventures comic book series to go along with it. So it was just Batman everywhere. We are DC guys through and through.
Absolutely.
I think as we've grown up, we've certainly grown to love and appreciate some of Marvel's characters, but DC is where our heart lies, which is a rarity nowadays, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because that was much more of our intro to all of these characters, was these animated series and the toys and the tie-in comics. So it was always fun when in Batman or in Superman later on when they started introducing characters like the Flash and Green Lantern and stuff like that, because we didn't really have a great deal of knowledge of who they were. Like maybe we'd seen the old Super Friends cartoon and reruns or something, but we didn't have a great appreciation for sort of the larger DC universe. So definitely growing up for us, it was very much a Batman and Superman centered household. And that really did, though, I think gave both of us a deep love for these properties, for the comic books themselves. And as you get a little older and you want to start to explore more, and I think that's one of the best parts of living in the era that we do, is being able to digitally buy comics and older back issues and stuff now. It's really fun because you're able to do as much research as you want to do, or find out if you get really into one character, you can find those giant omnibuses at comic book shops or at Barnes and Nobles and things like that, where you can really find what you need. But yeah, definitely growing up, these two series that we now do a podcast about, and the DC animated universe, and especially Batman, was our gateway drug, so to speak, as far as really getting us into the comics and the collectibles of it all.
Yeah, I also like how you kind of touched on your latest episode, that you would frequently watch the VHS tapes that had a certain amount of episodes which are themed after each villain. And I know Scott's talked about those, and I feel like any BTS fan, that's definitely nostalgic and hits you right in the feels. And it also sounds like you guys had a great dad, definitely. Hooked you guys up.
Yeah, just the packaging of those VHS things gets you excited. Like the brilliant pictures they put on there are absolutely fantastic, and I love how they continued it with the DVDs and Justice League as well. They stuck with that similar sort of idea. I mean, that as a kid just excites the hell out of you when you see that. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember, every episode would begin with the previews for the other tapes. So it's like, well, when we're done with the Joker tape, we'll watch the Riddler tape next. And you get so jazzed, and you have the great music, the Adventures of Batman and Robin theme kick in as they're narrating all these different tapes that you can watch in this set. It's like, man, that's just gets you amped. And as soon as you're done with one, you're like, man, I hope we can track down the next tape and then watch that next. Like it gets you excited, especially when you're a kid.
Well, sort of on that subject, what was your first and earliest sort of DCAU memories?
For me, I think Cal already kind of touched on it as far as remembering getting toys for his 4th or 5th birthday. It's for me, it's one of those things. I think because I was born a little bit later. I was born in the beginning of '93, and so like it's almost kind of like it was always around. Like because as I got old enough and started appreciating it, it had already been on, and it was on in reruns, and it was on 5 days a week on weekdays, and then on Saturday mornings too. And so it almost just for me is almost like I just always remember it being around and having some of the toys and which ones my 2 older brothers would let me play with when I was, because when you're a little kid, you kind of smash them together, you chip all the paint, so it had to be like ones we had doubles of, or ones maybe our dad or mom would find in like a thrift store or something that they didn't care if they got beat up, they would give to me. So I remember having the Ninja Robin figure, and from Kenner, and just smashing it against the wall in my crib. Like my crib was up against the wall. I was probably like 3 years old, and for like years afterwards, you could still find like random black marks on the wall of the room I was in when I was 2 or 3 years old, because I just started. Robin had to kick that wall, and he kicked the crap out of that wall, and there's just black marks where all of the bottom, the paint off the bottom of his boots was just all over, making marks all over the nice white wall.
It's so true.
I love it.
It's so true. I had the combat belt Batman as a kid, and I played the crap out of that thing. And I look back at it now; it's got like no paint on it. And now it's worth like $80. I'm like, no, what have I done? Like, I completely ruined this brilliant figure. It's worthless now.
Well, it's funny. I think thinking about it, like the first time I ever thought of it. Like, what are my earliest memories of like the DCAU? And obviously the cartoons certainly were prevalent and were there, but I have a deep love for that original Batman Adventures comic book series too. With Ty Templeton and Rick Burkett and all those guys that started that animated tie-in. So a lot of those comic books, even if they aren't strictly canon or work well within the actual DCAU, those stories are near and dear. Because I remember just we were limited to a certain amount of TV we could watch per day, so it's not like the TV was on all the time. So we were encouraged to go read, and I was never like a classic book reader, but comic books always much more appealed to me than a book. So the fact that I could open up these Batman issues and flip through it and just seeing the wonderfully drawn pages and of these same characters that I loved watching on TV, really, like, I'm getting the nostalgia feels now thinking about it. Like, I gotta go get my own issues out of storage.
Yeah, I remember we had these nice big binders with all the original Batman adventures, and then when the show got rebranded as Adventures in Batman and Robin, they also kind of rebranded the comic and relaunched it as Batman and Robin Adventures. And so I remember just looking through all those, and like we were saying, that was kind of our only exposure to the larger DC universe. So when they would bring in a character like Zatanna or somebody to that show, that was always really cool, because we get to find out, there's a little bit more out there. And when you get a little older and maybe you have a little bit of money of your own, you can kind of start looking around and find it and start exploring the larger world. But yeah, that stuff, that the comic book tie-ins definitely were a big part of kind of nurturing that love when maybe we weren't always watching the show.
I think it goes even further than that as well, doesn't it? Because the comic book is literally the same art as the actual series, whereas you see like animated adaptations of things like the Hush movie, for example, or the Dark Knight Returns movie. They have similar visuals, but it's not the same art sort of thing, But DCAU and comic books from the Batman Adventures and Justice League, stuff like that. It's all the same artwork, you know. It's instantly identifiable no matter what form you're watching or reading.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really makes, when you want to just spend a little more time in that world, and maybe you've already watched all the episodes you have on tape or something, or you don't feel like playing with your toys right now, and you want to, you want more stories from that world. You want to live in that world a little longer. That's a great point. That gives you a very direct tie-in versus, as you mentioned, sort of more, instead of more of a classic adaptation, this is directly supposed to tie into that world and fit into that world.
Yeah.
Now, you guys touched on it a little bit with new characters and the expanding world that the animated universe started to grow into. And they rebranded also into the new Batman Adventures. And from there, that's where I first learned of characters like Nightwing and Etrigan, and a bunch of characters that started adding like Livewire, Creeper. And so in terms of were you guys still big fans? Because I know I kind of went away from it a little until I heard that there was a new Batman Adventures, and then I started getting back into it. Were you guys aware of it and watching it from the get-go and big fans, or did you hear of it later and get into it?
Yeah,
what did you think of the new designs?
Ooh, that's a topic of controversy right there.
It definitely is.
Yeah, as far as watching it, we were watching, I think the first season of Superman had been on the air by then on Kids WB.
Oh yeah.
So we had watched, I don't know if we were watching it every single weekend, but we were watching Superman pretty regularly. So when the big Saturday morning announcement of the world's finest television movie, or the Batman Superman movie, depending on which DVD you got.
Amazing.
When that was announced and we found out, there's going to be new Batman, because we liked Superman, but certainly, especially at that point, we had such more sort of a deeper love for the Batman, the animated series. So hearing that it's Batman, it's the same Batman from the old shows, but he's in a new suit, and getting to see Lex Luthor and Mercy and Harley Quinn and Joker all team up together, it was a big deal.
And the cool thing about that is that through the comic book series, from the Batman Adventures and then the Batman and Robin Adventures, they did it's either 4 or 6 comic book miniseries called The Lost Years that were supposed to be sort of canonical what happened in between these new Batman designs and the classic Batman design. So that kind of helped at least with your imagination, I guess, explain, well, why does Batman all of a sudden not have the yellow around his bat symbol and wear the pouch belt now? And why is Tim Drake Robin, and why is his costume red and black instead of red and green? And why is Nightwing now? And so our fandom being beyond the actual TV series and being with the included sort of supplemental material was a huge part of embracing that new Batman Adventures. I think looking back now at it, especially we have not technically reviewed any new Batman Adventures episodes yet, because we go in order for our Batman episodes. So we're still in season 2 of Batman animated series on our program. We did review the Batman World's Finest, the Batman Superman movie.
We got around that because that's technically Superman episodes, so
but
we couldn't wait.
At least for me, looking back now, I appreciate the new Batman Adventures, but just looking at what an artistic feat it was for the Batman animated series, what it was at the time, what it's meant going forward, certainly the cartoons that it's based off of with the Fleischer Superman cartoons, which are just absolutely iconic and so underrated. It's my love, at least, is appreciated for the Batman animated series, but seeing new characters like Creeper, like Nightwing being brought into the fold, because during those years of Batman's popularity growing and the animated series bringing its popularity about, and certainly the live action movies too at the time, when they started putting out those other action figure series like the Nightfall, the Legends of Batman series that had the Nightfall characters, and we had the Nightwing figure from that. So learning in the main continuity what's going on with the characters. Oh, Dick Grayson's not Robin anymore. Why does he have a mullet? Like, what's the story behind this? And then you get the Nightfall Batman figure. What? Batman's got giant blades on his arms and has this giant wacky 90s cape. Like, what is this? So being able to see some of those characters translate into new designs and stuff like that, certainly it wasn't a shock to our system, because obviously we had seen and had a little bit more knowledge about the main DC continuity outside of Batman the animated series at that time. But yeah, my heart is with Batman the animated series as far as designs are concerned.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think like obviously it makes more sense for new Batman adventures to fit more in with the Superman style that they had established.
Yeah.
But it does feel like there's a little bit. It's like almost and obviously I understand that, and the creators have talked about how that was partially just to make the style easier to follow, easier to animate by having simpler designs. But I almost feel like some of the, for lack of a better word, like some of the romance of those original Batman episodes is in, some of the imperfections in the animation and the looks, how Batman doesn't always necessarily look exactly the same depending on who directed the episode or which storyboard artists boarded a specific scene or which animation company was in charge of that episode. I feel like it's almost a little bit more variations, not unlike if you read a comic book series for any length of time, you can see, and the artist changes, which happens quite frequently, especially in modern comics, where Batman, it's the same suit, same character, but the ears are a little longer, or the cowl's nose droops a little lower. Like it kind of feels like that to me. And the new Batman adventures, while still cool, and it was still fun to get more Batman and get even more characters introduced. Like I said, I feel like there's almost a little bit of the magic of the series was some of the imperfections in those original episodes.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, especially like if you look at On Leather Wings, as opposed to like The Last Laugh. Even there's such like a different look to even both those episodes. So yeah.
Yeah. Now the two of the first episodes as well. So
yeah,
it shows you a big difference. And then you get into I know you called it before, Tyler, the Red Sky series of the New Adventures.
Yes.
So all the red skies everywhere. It's true.
Yeah, which is because obviously now that we're older and have reviewed or have read like the Crisis, the big giant crossover books, it's like red skies in DC Comics are supposed to mean like the end of the world's happening, but DC, their new Batman Adventures Gotham is just red skies all the time, and I guess it's fine.
It's a constant state of chaos.
yeah, it's constant. And although it was quite clever to use the red sky, and then they use like a bright blue sky in Metropolis most of the time. It's quite a nice parallel between the cities that you don't really think about until you notice it, if that makes sense. It's not something
definitely.
It's quite a
great point.
Sort of thing. And
now you guys also you've been touching on the comics, and I was gonna try to put it off till more toward the end, but we might as well just get into it. There's big news recently. I'm gonna flip again. You guys covered it on your site, on your Instagram, that they're going to be doing, for the figures that they're releasing, they're going to be doing a tie-in comic. And in the interview, they talk about how that's like a history for Batman the Animated Series. And I believe, Cal, you're talking about how that's how it kind of got you guys into mentally being prepared for the new Batman Adventures on TV, because they introduced those ideas and stuff in the comics. And they kind of mentioned that they're going to do the comics with like Jason and some more characters that like Deathstroke and stuff. And they kind of gave a hint that that something else might be coming. So they don't want to do too much. Now, what do you imply from that?
I mean, obviously my hopes and my dreams is that they're gonna, nostalgia has never been hotter. Nostalgia, we do a podcast that centers and capitalized completely on nostalgia. So my hopes and if this was me making this happen, of course there's going to be a new animated series. Maybe it just turns out to be a one-shot movie, which is probably more likely because that seems to be what Warner has been invested in as of late. But I would take either, to be honest, because I don't know in 2020, unless they're going to tie something in with the DC Universe app or HBO Max or whatever Warner is doing these days, where there would be a place for a Batman animated series. And it seems like most of the players, at least the legendary voice cast, are still connected in some way to a lot of DC projects, which is encouraging, which means that, Kevin Conroy, of course, just recently played a live action Batman for the first time and has done plenty of those DC animated movies. And then, depending on which Superman you want to include, and, of course, Mark Hamill's played the Joker dozens of times in various different projects for Warner over the last 15 years, whatever it's been since Justice League went off the air. So my hope is definitely that they do a 13 episode series, or even if it was something, a limited series, like an 8 episode animated series for one of the streaming services would be the ultimate announcement. But even if it's just a one shot hour and 20-minute movie, to kind of incorporate some of these new characters. They talked about Deathstroke and Red Hood, and they even had the Batman Who Laughs and Dark Knight Returns Batman.
Yeah.
Some of these other things that we've never seen or even just heard discussed in the DCAU would be really great.
For me, my thought was, especially once I started seeing the animated versions of these alternate Batman, I was like, what if, and this is a big what if, what if we did like an Into the Spider-Verse type thing, but with Batman, and you kind of have Kevin Conroy's Batman the Animated Series Batman as the central Batman, and then he kind of meets all of these different alternate versions. I actually think there might have been an episode of the Brave and the Bold cartoon that did a similar topic to this, but that was a 22-minute episode. If you could flesh that out and do a movie, sure, or a lengthier comic book series or something, I think that would maybe be where my imagination, where my hopes went to. But to Cal's point, I do think that all of these giant streaming services, because everyone has one now, everybody needs content for it, and you need content that's going to draw in subscribers. And I don't know, it can be hard to tell with something like the DCAU. Is that going to draw in millions of subscribers to your site? Of course, probably not. But would it draw in an extra 10,000 people? Maybe it would. And is that worth it to Warner Brothers or HBO or whoever has to make that decision? If it would be worth it to order like Cal said, another mini series of one of the shows, or another live or another animated movie or something like that. And fingers crossed it is. But that was kind of where my head was definitely going, was all those streaming services need content to try to attract those new subscribers, and that would certainly be a way to get some in.
Doesn't that aspect of it give you some kind of worry, though, that it's just done for a cash grab or money? Would you be afraid that because we've seen things as recently as Star Wars get fans upset, Terminator, they've gotten fans upset and doing rehashes or bringing something back. So, I mean, I'm kind of excited at the same time and also kind of worried. I just want to hear what you guys think.
That's definitely always a worry, because I think, and so it almost happens with everything. Like I'm a huge fan of the television show Arrested Development. And that's a case in point of something that was never, ever going to be able to live up to the hype that people built it to, just because of the hype and people's demand for more of it. And then it finally happens, and it's not what people wanted. And then they do a second season after that that's better, but still not what people wanted. And realistically, it wasn't good. What they produced was not good. But I think that even if they had produced something that was acceptable or good, there still would have been a lot of disappointment, just because it's the nostalgia thing. We rewatch these episodes that are almost 30 years old because we love them, and we could probably tell you beat by beat what happens in them. We can overlook the things that we don't like because of the feelings that it gives us from our childhood. So what? Batman's ears are 2 times longer in this episode than they were in the last episode. We just spent today, we spent an entire episode talking about the Joker's eyes and how they were off model. Like, we can talk about that, but the truth is we still enjoyed the episode enough to do a review of it and talk about it. So, yeah, I think it does worry me because, the truth is, now, if they do the right thing and you don't cut corners, and you bring in Paul Dini and you bring in Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett and all the original people, if that's possible, as well as bringing in the voice cast that feels familiar, yeah, then and if they produce something that's good, not great, I think that's still acceptable. But
yeah,
well, and to your point, it's also are they to all those creators and actors and everything? If you're bringing them back and everybody's excited and they have a fresh story that they really think is cool and exciting, and they're excited about it, I think that's one thing. But I mean, the creators talked about that, why kind of the new Batman adventures didn't go nearly as long as the original Batman animated series was. They sort of felt like they were out of ideas, and they were more interested in moving on to Batman Beyond and into Justice League eventually after that. They kind of felt like they had told all of the Batman stories they had to tell. And I do wonder about that. And if I would hate to bring people like, I mean, obviously James Tucker, one of the producers of Justice League, does all of the DC animated home movies. Now he's heavily involved in a lot of those. I would hate to like pull those guys off of projects that they are actually interested and excited about to say, no, go back and do the thing you used to do because we want more of that. And then at the end be disappointed because it's not as good. Well, it wouldn't be as good because they're not as invested in it as they were in 1992 or 1995 or 2000 or 2005. You know,
I think
that's definitely that is definitely a worry, I think.
I think that's a key point there. That you look at something like the Batman and Harley Quinn movie, that was just terrible. But then you look at something. Then you look at
you didn't like the musical stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Which musical number did you?
Which musical? Who cast that voice as Harley Quinn as well? That was a horrific decision.
Ooh, yeah.
Terrible decision. And you got Tara Strong there. Like, wow, would you cast her? But then you look at something like Justice League v Fatal 5, which was a hell of a lot better. A really good movie. Really enjoyed that. So I think it does depend on very much who's writing it. I think it's a good point about bringing obviously Paul Dini and Alan and Bruce all back into it. And Bruce Timm didn't cover himself in glory with that Harley Quinn and Batman movie. That's for sure. That was terrible. I mean, defeating Swamp Thing by setting fire to him, that's pathetic. It's just terrible.
Well, to your point about... to kind of expand on that, I remember Bruce Timm, when they did the animated Killing Joke movie, which is also, I think, a sore spot for a lot of fans. Yeah. Obviously, that's not directly a Batman the Animated Series story, but Bruce Timm was involved in the creation of that, and he talked about, for years, he didn't want to do an adaptation of The Killing Joke because he didn't think it worked for a movie. And then they did it, and he and Brian Azzarello, who's an accomplished comic book writer, co-wrote the script for it. And that there's that weird, like, 25 minutes Batgirl story that's tacked onto it that everybody hated. And it's like, well, and when you're watching him do interviews, and he's like, well, I never wanted to do this in the first place. You almost feel bad for him. It's like, maybe we could have just not done without the adaptation of The Killing Joke and let him work on a different Batman story that he did have an exciting feeling about.
Yeah, he's saying, like, I didn't want to do it in the first place. Well, don't do it then. Like, no one was forcing you to do it. So don't do it. Yeah.
In terms of the Batgirl stuff, that stuff was also touched in the Lost Years, right? So were you guys okay with that? Because I was just like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me because I was aware of that stuff. But I know a lot of people hated it. So were you guys perfectly fine with that?
It wasn't as dramatic a thing for us because it's very well established, especially by the time like Batman Beyond came around, that they were a couple, and that's what couples do. Like it wasn't like a dramatic scandal to us that Batman and Batgirl kissed in the movie that it was to other people. But
people were freaking out.
I don't get the outrage about that. I feel like there's about 700 other things in Alan Moore's writing, or especially that thing.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Like so much more that you can be outraged about other than Batman and Batgirl kissing. Yeah,
it's really not that was not dramatic to us, and that it was one of those things like, really, that's what I was like, I just didn't think the story like that again, like when they just adapt the main Killing Joke story, it's fine. But that tacked on Batgirl, it's like it has nothing to do with the fact that Batman and Batgirl are romantic in that subplot. It's like the subplot isn't good. It's not interesting. Like that's why I didn't like it, but nobody seemed to want to talk about that.
Yeah,
That's actually a very good point.
it's a good point.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think just here it's cool hearing Mark Hamill recite the Coen jokes. So that's Other than that, I could do without it. But in terms of going on to the animated universe, you touched on Batman Beyond, and were you guys still big into everything in the lore up till then? You guys were a little older, maybe middle school. Maybe it wasn't as cool.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny. we have a story that we've told on the podcast before, but so we did have. You mentioned we had a very cool dad. However, we also had a dad that was a little bit overprotective, very what I would call very conservative parent. And the Batman Beyond episode that had Spellbinder on it.
No, it was Disappearing Ink.
Disappearing Ink? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. First, the Disappearing Ink episode, which is the episode where she transforms.
There's like this weird loser janitor character that helps break ink out of prison.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
So she like tries to turn him into like another ink creature.
But she like isn't half the formula or whatever, and he turns into this weird, just sort of like melting human being.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
And like a weird voice effect where the guy sounds like he's dying while he's talking. Well, that scared Liam enough that I don't know if you had actual nightmares from it or if you just told Dad that you were frightened by it, but Liam was not allowed to watch Batman Beyond for a certain period of time because of that, because he was scared by it. So I think the irony now is that we both get. I mean, I was still allowed to watch it. Liam wasn't.
Right.
So he would have to sit in another room while we watched.
That's so messed up.
Yeah, it was cruel. It was cruel.
But we had both developed such a great appreciation for what that series is in that it is a part of that DCAU and the history and everything that comes with that, but did such a great job of establishing itself, creating its own characters, its own
so true
gallery, its own. I mean, there are definitely some stinkers in that series. But there are a lot of just really well-developed characters, cool-looking characters who, since we're on the Collecticast here, I must air my grievances that DC still has not made the majority of Batman Beyond's Rogues Gallery in feature film. Like, huge missed opportunity there. Spellbinder, Blight, Mr. Freeze, Ink, Stalker, all of those guys deserve their own action figures. Like,
and Shriek as well. I love Shriek.
Oh,
He's one of my favorite ever villains. I mean, they created so many amazing characters from that series and completely different, almost futuristic powers as well. With obviously Shriek with the sound and Ink with like a shapeshifter, and Spellbinder's an amazing character. Like, it gives so much creative freedom as well for like the artists and like the visual people.
Mm-hmm.
But what we like about them too is that they're close enough and similar enough to maybe another, and not necessarily Batman villains, but villains you're familiar with. We talked about on the Stalker episode that we just covered that the Stalker is very much a Kraven the Hunter, Spider-Man type character, but it's done in a fresh new way, and his visual design is unique enough, and his story is unique enough where it creates this interesting character that doesn't feel like it's just another standard Batman villain pushed into the future.
Yeah, and I think especially as kids, like we would have been fine with just regular Batman and Superman forever, but them taking a chance and going, no, let's do a show. And I think I remember Bruce Timm saying that Glenn Murakami, who of course went on to do the Teen Titans show and a bunch of other stuff, was kind of really gung-ho about this idea of let's do a teenage Batman show. And I know, I think Kids WB was also really interested in trying to have a show that skewed a little younger. Let's do a teenage Batman. And when you just hear the words teenage Batman, if Batman Beyond hadn't existed, just imagine someone tries to pitch you, we're going to do Batman as a teenager. That sounds terrible.
It really does.
But they made it. They took a chance just on the concept, and then they built this incredible futuristic world that still feels very authentically Batman's. Gotham City. I love the way they built this. The backgrounds and everything, where the city is. You still kind of have that grimy slum area, and then you kind of take the subway as an elevator that goes up to the nicer parts where you go to school or you work, and then the poor folks take the elevator back down to the slums when it's time to go home. Like, they came up with so many cool concepts, and as you guys already touched on, the villains, they didn't just do Joker Beyond and Two-Face Beyond. They actually took time to create villains again that feel very authentic to Batman, to DC Comics, but still had completely their own flavor to it.
Weren't just knockoffs of the old stuff.
Exactly.
This is Double Down. He's like Two-Face, but he's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, what did you guys think when they eventually went into Justice League? Were you guys still pumped on that, or did you want more Batman?
Well, again, and so we lived in a household that didn't have help. Sort of a surprise to us. Our grandfather, who lived about 5 minutes from our house, was the one that had cable, so we would go over there and watch cable when we could. But I remember he actually taped it off of Cartoon Network and just gave it to us one day. He said, "Hey, I taped this for you." And we put it in, and we're like, "Holy crap, there's a Justice League cartoon!" Like, this is 2001 or whatever it was, so the internet's taken off, but it's not readily available like it is today. So finding out that there was a Justice League cartoon based on the same universe that we grew up with, and now suddenly it's not just Batman and Superman, or Batman, Superman, and Flash even, but Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter is finally making a cartoon appearance, and then you have John Stewart, Green Lantern, who we knew about but didn't know a whole bunch about, and then of course bringing in Hawkgirl too, and then it was really exciting and really fun.
Yeah, I remember just watching it, and again just being excited that we got more of that wider world. And like we said, obviously Superman, I think, started invested in the cosmic elements. There was the Legion of Superheroes, and Green Lantern and Dr. Fate and people like that made appearances. But to get a regular show where every week you can see team ups, and then you started mixing in some of the older characters that we knew, like Superman and Batman, but you had all these fresh faces that we'd never really gotten to see, or that we hadn't seen much of before, really get a chance to shine and just broaden out that world. And it's within the first few episodes, you're going to Oa, and you're meeting all of the different alien Green Lanterns, and the Guardians, and the Manhunters, and you meet Gorilla Grodd, and you get a Flash and Green Lantern team up episode. And
I remember we watched one of the first episodes that we watched was the Aquaman episode.
Enemy Below, I believe it's called.
Brilliant.
There's a shadowy figure that's assassinating Aquaman. I remember watching it with Liam and being like, I wonder if that's Deadshot. Sort of just because I'd seen Deadshot on the cover of an old Batman Detective Comics, and all of a sudden they unmask him, and it is Deadshot. I remember looking at Liam like, oh my gosh, Deadshot!
and I'm like, who's Deadshot? I don't know that one.
He's an assassin.
That's awesome.
That would be me.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, as you guys say, you grew up in a conservative household. That was very much the same thing for me. So I didn't. That's why everything I learned about comics up until I was a certain age was from this show. Like, I had no idea about Nightwing and all that stuff. So this is actually you guys are matching up with me. This is pretty funny.
What's up?
I remember I got my comic book taken away when I think I was like 5 or 6, and my mom and dad gave me Spider-Man versus Batman, and Carnage was talking about rape, and so I asked my mom and dad, "What's rape?" And then from there on, I was embargoed. I eventually snuck and got it back, but yeah, that's what.
You have to wait long enough for them to forget why they took it away from you, and then you can get it back.
Exactly. That's why it was just funny hearing that Liam was in another room while Cal's just sitting there loving life. But one thing that we like to ask every guest, and this is going to be really enjoyable to ask you guys, because I'm sure that it will have a lot more meaning, and you guys will have a lot more in-depth to say about it, and I would love both of you guys to give us your top 3 BTS episodes.
Wow.
And they could include new Batman Adventure episode or TV movies.
Oh my gosh. Man, it's funny. So I will preface this by saying that when you go back, and so our show, we did this with the intention. We started our program 2 years ago, which was right around the 25th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series. There was a lot of people coming out with lists and ranking their top episodes from worst to best. And the podcast came out of a conversation that Liam and I had about, hey, well, what if we started ranking our own? Because we looked at some of these and we were like, there's no way that episode should be that played.
Yeah.
What were these? No, they don't appreciate it for this. Like,
right.
I think it probably won't appear in our top 3, but there's an episode early on that gets a lot of slack called The Forgotten, which is not a Batman heavy episode. Batman gets amnesia. And there's not a lot of Batman in it.
He's sent to like a work camp, like a coal miner, where they've been kidnapping homeless people. It's like, it's real weird stuff for a kid's cartoon.
It's brilliant, that is. You see, that's my dad's favorite episode. He loves that episode.
Awesome.
See, you get an experience with Liam then.
Yes.
Liam loves that. There's a lot more than just the storyline itself may not, and that's why we break them down into categories and sort of rank them that way, because the music in that episode carries that episode so well, and there's so much about these.
Yeah, there it is.
That's it. And when you hear that, you're like, you're taken back. And you remember watching that episode 5 or 6 different times as you're growing up, and just the feelings that you had with it. So I will preface that by saying that when you start looking at these episodes through a more analytical lens, which is what we tend to do on the show, you appreciate episodes in different ways. So I can tell you, growing up, that The Forgotten, or It's Never Too Late, which is another heartstring pulling, really well written episode.
Yeah,
I probably would have told you that would be the last episode that I would want to watch. I would watch like Be a Clown or something, but I can tell you now that I don't like Be a Clown at all. So I'll let Liam go while I try and think of my 3 now that I've solved one.
So yeah, including New Batman Adventures, and these won't be all episodes necessarily that we've reviewed yet, but I think number 3 for me is the New Batman Adventures episode, Growing Pains. Which is an episode where Robin finds a lost girl, and speaking of amnesia, she has amnesia, and she keeps running away, and there's this big jacked up dude who's chasing her, and Robin really wants to help her, and Batman is like really a jerk in the episode. Yeah. And he's just telling him, like, forget about it. She's a runaway. She'll end up at a homeless shelter. It's not our concern. We've got to deal with, the big crimes. We've got to, and Robin is so focused that he goes and finds, and finally, we find out throughout the course of the episode that she's actually part of Clayface, and Clayface at the end of the episode reabsorbs her into himself and
so weird.
Kills her, basically. And it's such a downer of an ending, and it's such a tragic end. But I've always gravitated more to Robin, especially the Tim Drake Robin character. I think that comes from watching it when you're 6 or 7 and you see a kid out having adventures. You're just naturally going to invest a little bit more in the person that you can identify more with. But so that would probably be my number 3, just because it's such a heartbreaking.
Even Batman says not all endings are happy endings.
Right, and it's like this is a Saturday morning cartoon in 1997 or whatever, and the story ends with the little girl dies and Robin is sad. That's how the story ends. Like
walking into the sunset sad.
Mm-hmm.
I love that moment as well when he goes, I just found out who Daddy is.
Yeah,
that moment as well. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's great, and I liked anything that kind of focused again on the rift, because again, as we talked about, as we know with the benefit of foresight, where Bruce Wayne ends up at the beginning of Batman Beyond. He's an old man living alone with a dog as his only companion when he meets Terry. So, and obviously we get that more expanded on in later episodes and movies and stuff, but it's like this you can kind of begin to see the building blocks of even before the terrible things that happened in Return of the Joker, why Tim and Tim maybe don't work out. And it's because this was clearly like this really, really important thing to Robin, to Tim, and Bruce for most of the episode is just kind of jerk. Yeah, he's just like blowing him off. He's telling him to forget about it. And so I like anything like that kind of adds a little bit extra meat to the bone when we know where these characters all end up. Yeah. Number 2, this is a gimme, but I'll say Heart of Ice. Yes. Just because it won an Emmy for goodness sake. It's pretty much perfect. It's redesigning what was just a very gimmicky villain of the the 50s and 60s in comics, and giving him this horribly tragic backstory that that all he wanted to do was save his wife, and the corporate greed killed his wife basically. And so now he's out to take revenge. And the idea of Batman sort of grappling with, he's not a mustache twirling villain knocking over banks, this is a deeply personal crusade that Mr. Freeze is on.
In a way, he's seeking vengeance over justice.
Right.
Which is weird because Batman said he is vengeance, but that's not
yeah.
Anyway, but it's that fine line of Batman seeks justice for his parents' death, where Mr. Freeze was seeking vengeance for his wife's death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a story with a moral conundrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, it just gives you a little bit of an extra layer where Mr. Freeze, just in and of himself, it's a cool character. You're going to have cool visuals with the freeze gun and all that, but to really add that layer of this tragedy to him really just takes it to the next level.
And it shows like how calloused he is when he freezes his own goon and says he should have been more careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's love that.
Literally and figuratively, he's a cold man, doesn't care about anything. But and then number one, I think for me is actually Cal just alluded to it, but it might be Nothing to Fear.
Brilliant shot.
It's the first Scarecrow episode, which leads to the iconic "I am vengeance, I am the night" line by Kevin Conroy's Batman. But it's this great story because in addition to all the cool visuals of the fear gas making Batman hallucinate, it's this really, again, a very deeply personal story where he keeps seeing his father tell him he's a failure, it's a disgrace to the name Wayne. He has this he gets accosted by this university professor that knew his dad that just knows the public. He just knows the public face of Bruce Wayne, so he tells him, "You're a party boy, and your father would be ashamed of you." And if he didn't, he says something. I'm not quoting directly, but he basically says, "It's a good thing your dad died, because if he didn't die from the gun, he would have died of shame seeing what you'd become."
Basically, yeah.
And having that go from that, and then have the fear gas, taking very real issues of people who have doubts, or if you have a loved one that's died, or that you would want that person to be proud of you as you continue on in your life. And then you blow that up to a superhero level of fear gas and hallucinations and this dramatic Scarecrow performance. It's just really, really tremendous stuff. And the final shot of that episode is Bruce Wayne standing at his parents' grave.
With good music.
Yeah, big overcoat. The music swells. Yep. And he walks away, and his shadow is the Batman cowl. And it's just this perfect thing where even though he kind of conquers his fear, that vow he makes to his parents is still very much at the center of who he is. And so that one always sticks out to me as one that just, it's picture perfect.
Yeah, it really is.
It's probably the episode I've rewatched the most.
Yeah.
It's really good. Everything about that episode is great, too. The music is really, really strong in that episode, too. I'm going to go, these are actually all episodes that we've actually recently covered, because I'm going to be honest, so I intentionally don't try and watch ahead, even though I've seen all these episodes multiple times. It's been a while since I watched all of them, so the ones that are most fresh in my mind are ones that we've already reviewed. So I would say number 3 is going to be See No Evil, which is the Invisible Man episode, which is a really, really strong episode visually, because it's interesting that they had a villain on screen that you couldn't see that fights Batman, but also the story of it's just got a sort of everything married together. It's very creepy. It's also, hey, this guy is just trying to have a relationship with his daughter, but he's just not a good person. He's just not capable of having a healthy relationship with his daughter because he's a bad person, which, is relatable, because there's a lot of people in real life that can't have relationships with certain people because they're just unhealthy people. So, and Batman having to save this little girl from this innocent little girl from this guy who really isn't trying to do anything nefarious other than steal her away from the parent that is healthy.
Yeah. And I always like seeing Batman struggle a little bit too, to kind of just remind you that he is human. Yeah. Like, as capable and strong and smart as he is, it's like that's a villain. He literally can't see the guy. That's a villain he has a little trouble with. It takes him a while to figure out how to stop him.
He's gonna figure out, right, how can I...
Yeah, he gets beat up at the end before taking him back.
He was beat up a lot in that episode.
Yeah.
That's a great shout out.
Yeah. Number 2, I would say, is probably another episode we covered very recently, just last week actually, which was Heart of Steel, parts 1 and 2.
Good show, yeah.
That's the one with Hardak, where he creates the android copies of people, and it's funny because we talked about it on the show, but I thought of it as, it's this mad scientist who creates this machine to create replacements for other people, but in truth, the story is that the scientist created this machine out of his mourning because his daughter was killed by a drunk driver, and then the machine itself becomes sort of sentient and decides it's going to create replacements for everybody. That he's not the villain. The machine turns out to be the actual villain of the show, to the point where Carl Rossum, who's the scientist, gets replaced himself. So it's sort of a classic take on that Dr. Frankenstein's monster. The monsters become stronger than the creator and takes over and wreaks havoc. And it's visually a very interesting episode. You get the introduction of Barbara Gordon to the episode, and it's a fun episode too.
Yeah.
And then
you see the seeds of Bruce's attraction. You've grown, Barbara.
Yeah.
I have to wonder, somebody needs to ask Bruce Tim, like, did you guys know then? Like, did you know? Or is this
probably had an idea.
Easter egg? Like, is it a retroactive Easter egg at that point?
Yeah,
that's true.
And then number 1, it's got to be Heart of Ice. Heart of Ice is, it's the perfect episode. Everything about it. Michael Ansara, who does Mr. Freeze's voice, his performance is like everything you could want from a Mr. Freeze story. It, like Liam said, it redefined, Paul Dini's writing redefined a character that was a D level or C level hero or villain, and then forever changed the story arc of that character story.
They even brought that origin into Arnold Schwarzenegger's portrayal of him in the beloved Batman and Robin live action movie. Sure.
I can't even speak on that.
Yeah.
No, but those are great choices. I actually like that you guys picked those episodes that tend not to get a lot of love. But what's funny is we're like you. We go back and we watch the episodes and we review them. And there's some episodes we look on the schedule and we're thinking, crap, we got to watch that. And then you watch and you're like, wait a minute, this is way better and way deeper than I ever could have imagined.
It's Never Too Late was one of them for sure.
Yeah,
that was a crazy one. I couldn't believe it. I was telling my mom about that. Actually, like, did you know that this was on TV? I was watching this.
That's the thing. I think that's why me and Tyler say this a lot, but we think that the animated series wouldn't work these days because they can't be that dark on TV anymore. And especially when you look at It's Never Too Late as a prime example of that. Just imagine that being a kids' cartoon these days. It'd never be allowed to be shown.
Even the Underdwellers, that guy's basically just abducting children. Like, who knows what else he's doing with them? They didn't show it, but that's just creepy.
We try not to talk about the other
episodes. We have a group of episodes, our worst episodes that we...
That's in the bad episode jar. You guys owe us $1 for the bad episode jar.
The crocodile noise where they just tend to sort of like breathe very deeply at you. It's very strange.
Oh, man.
Do you want to ask your traditional questions, guys?
Well, I'm going to change mine. I usually ask about the Batman Arkham games, but I'm going to change mine to your top 3 favorite Justice League animated episodes, because it's my personal favorite series, Justice League. So I'm going to ask you what are your top 3 from those?
Straight up Justice League.
Is unlimited allowed to for them?
Of course it is, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start out. I think my number 3 would probably be The season, I think it's the season 2 premiere of the original Justice League, Twilight, which is
what a shout! Amazing.
It's so good, and especially because we had just come off a month of reviewing Superman episodes that we ended with the finale, Legacy, which is, Superman goes to Apocalypse at the end of that 2-parter, fights Darkseid, darn near kills him, but leaves him alive, and his subjects all come and all the slaves of Apocalypse come and pick him up and carry him away on their shoulders because he says, "I am God," to Superman. And so we went right from that to reviewing Twilight. And it's funny. Obviously, it's a different voice actor for Superman. George Newbern did it in Justice League. Tim Daly did it in the Superman the Animated Series. But picking right back up into that story, and you immediately, it feels so cool. I remember watching it when it first debuted on television, and I got the same feeling then of feeling that story connected, because to me, that's one of all the DCAU. The Superman Darkseid rivalry that carries from Superman all the way through to Justice League Unlimited. That's one of the, it's Batman and Joker, it's Superman and Darkseid. Those are some of the, I think, the best, and the fact that Superman kind of had a thread throughout its entire run where they sort of very slowly introduced the Apocalypse characters. And we sort of got a glimpse of Darkseid here, a glimpse of him there before they finally do the big invasion episode. Yeah. And then finally getting back to your actual question, getting to that Twilight episode in Justice League and seeing that pick up kind of right where Superman had left off, with Darkseid still in control, Superman still furious at him for wanting to, for turning him against Earth and all of that, and also throwing in Brainiac into the mix, and having all the fun on the side with Batman and Wonder Woman going to New Genesis to try to recruit help is really fun too. So that's probably my number 3. I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, and the writing for that episode is amazing as well, and the way that they incorporated that one, along with A Better World and Starcross, sort of morph into the Unlimited storylines as well, how they combined all 3 of those to knit them together into Justice League Unlimited was amazing. And they didn't make it look forced either. That was the incredible bit of it.
Agreed.
It genuinely looked fantastic.
Yeah. Aside from that one, I guess my number 2 would probably be an Unlimited episode. I believe it's called Clash. It's the one and only episode with Shazam / Captain Marvel.
Oh my god, that's an unbelievable episode.
It was so fun, and because that storyline is kind of all about Lex kind of ticking Superman off and kind of needling him, and Superman's so paranoid and angry, and having sort of almost a voice for the audience, because Captain Marvel, Billy Batson, is literally a child, being able to look up at his larger than life hero and go, "You're not a hero, you're not acting like a hero anymore," and having that very poignant moment where it's like, yeah, Superman was set up and he was taken advantage of and he was swindled by Luthor, but at the end to still have that point of Captain Marvel pointing the finger at Superman and the rest of the original members of the Justice League and tell him, you're not heroes anymore. So I quit. I thought that was such a poignant and a great use of that character. So that one's way up for me.
Yeah, and that was the key episode as well, where they found out about Luthor and Cadmus, wasn't it? The actual solid connection. And that moment at the end when he says, they set you up, Clark, and he's like, they. And then they see that was an amazing moment. You see Amanda Waller and Luthor. It's just brilliant, that moment. You got all these mighty heroes, and it's Batman in the end that makes the sort of solid connection with Question. I think it's just brilliant.
Yeah, Batman and the Question are kind of the guys who unravel the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And they're the 2 ones with no powers as well, which I think really is brilliant, the way that they use those characters. Yeah,
absolutely. And then my number 1 is, oh gosh, this is real tough, but I am going to go with Starcrossed as my number 1. The 3-part, it's 3 parts, it's epic. It's such again, another really ballsy, daring thing to break, because again, they didn't, I think, as far as the creators said, they didn't 100% know they were coming back for more episodes after that. So like they end that ends on a real downer note of Hawkgirl betraying the Justice League, allowing this invading force to come to Earth, and to find out that she was a double agent all the time, and her relationship with the Jon Stewart character and how that had just kind of started to blossom, and she immediately kind of betrays him in favor of this Rotalic character that was kind of their stand-in for Hawkman at that point.
Yeah.
And then again, everybody kind of gets a cool moment or two in that episode. All of the Leaguers kind of have a cool moment. The fight where the Justice League has to fight all the Thanagarians in the Batcave is like all-time great. But
I love that moment. It's like your weapons are pitiful. They just like wait for it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, all the eyes of the bats open, and seeing the Flash interact with Alfred and stuff like that. Just again,
Alfred.
We could have probably all lived without that as fans, but aren't we so much happier for having that moment somewhere in the DCAU? We know Michael Rosenbaum's Flash got to talk to Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.'s Alfred, just if only for a moment.
I know, like back when On Leather Wings piloted, you'd never have imagined that possible. Like, it's just mad, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I would say, I guess my top three, I'll say Double Date is probably number 3.
That's cool.
I love that episode so much, just for the off-the-wall romance between Huntress and the Question. The Question character, and it deserves his own animated series. Like,
it's cool.
If they announced that they were just doing a Question animated series and like never again touch the DCAU other than that, I'd be okay with that. Just because that character is so great. Jeffrey Combs is the guy that does his voice and does such a great job of bringing that character, and he's so the paranoia and the goofiness and the seriousness behind the character. It's like if Batman was even more paranoid.
Yeah.
It's like Batman's paranoia was turned up to 11.
There's one of the other episodes, I think it might be the Doomsday Sanction, where he's like, I've got the Question working on this, and the rest of the Justice League groans at him.
Yeah. I love it when Green Arrow's like, we're going here. You can go wherever the hell you want. It's brilliant.
I love that interaction too between the Green Arrow character became such a cool staple in the Justice League Unlimited, and him, Black Canary in that episode, and the whole Huntress origin tale, and Mandragora as the villain, and the ending where they reveal that they have to protect this child of this mob boss that killed Huntress's parents. Like it's just another one of those morally, like, how do you figure out the right thing in the situation type episodes. So really, really enjoyed that one. Number 2, I would probably go with The Savage Time. Another great 3-parter, time travel, what if, what would happen, all that. Plus you get some cool cameos from those ancillary DC characters like Sergeant Rock and Easy Company. And really like getting to the bottom of the barrel nerddom, like
the Blackhawks,
Steve Trevor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get to see a lot of those cool Silver Age-ish. I guess it's Silver Age, right? Or Silver Age characters.
End of Golden Age, maybe.
Golden Age, maybe. Yeah. So that would be my number 2, and number 1. Speaking of Golden Age, is going to go to Legends, which is the
it's an amazing episode. Yeah, it's an amazing episode.
Justice Guild.
The Justice Guild of America. Yeah. I, to this day, as a 31, almost 32-year-old man, still get goosebumps when the cartoon characters stick their hands up and in unison say, "Let justice prevail" at the very end to take on the villains. So, that episode is just great. It's really.
And when they salute to John at the end, and they that's amazingly sad.
I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it,
man.
That episode is fun. It's you could tell the writers had a fun time. It's kind of weird that they weren't able to use the actual sort of Justice Society characters as these characters based. But I think it actually works out better in some way that they use these sort of pseudo characters in their stead. So
it's a good point. I know when I listened to your review of A Better World, you said the same thing about the Crime Syndicate, and I think it is almost better that they did make their own characters. They almost created their own story arc with it, and it didn't seem like a copy or anything. So I think that was good.
Yeah, I mean, they got so much mileage out of, especially as you mentioned, those Justice Lords characters. I mean, that became sort of the building grounds for that entire Cadmus arc in Unlimited later on.
Yeah, those are solid shouts. I'm surprised I didn't hear one epilogue.
Ooh.
Epilogue is, I mean, that's in a league of its own, though. You know, I feel like it's almost a Batman Beyond episode that if you tell me to pick top 3 Batman Beyond episodes, that's probably number 1 or 1A.
Yeah.
That's true. It doesn't feel like just.
That's a perfect capper to like the whole. It's funny because they ended up doing 13 more episodes of Unlimited after epilogue, but
yeah, that was a bit awkward,
at
wasn't
the
it?
time. Like, if you are the type of psycho like us that might one day watch all of these episodes chronologically, starting with On Leather Wings and going all the way through to the end. Like, I think you skip epilogue when you get to it, and you watch those last 13 Justice Leagues. And then you come back to epilogue, and that's your actual final ending for the series.
I completely hold my hands up to doing that. I even watched through Batman Beyond and then went back to epilogue to watch that, having not watched it before on purpose. Awesome. It is brilliant, though. And actually, on that, just before we run off, I wanted to shout out to Superman the Animated Series. It gets overlooked so often, but that series is amazing. Agreed. It really is. There's so many fantastic episodes in it, but no one seems to talk about it, and apart from you guys, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, Liam's a huge Superman guy. Like, that's...
Yeah.
It's funny, growing up in a very Batman house, somehow Liam became a giant Superman nerd in the last...
Yeah. Honestly, and this might be taboo to say, but I really... the much argued about Batman versus Superman movie, my thought of that movie is, like, Batman is such a jerk in that movie. And Superman is really just trying to help the whole time. Like, even when they have the fight at the end of that movie, Superman's just trying to talk to him, and Batman won't stop blowing stuff up in his face. And so finally Superman's like, fine, you little jerk, I'll fight you. And that, to me, like, that was like, I don't know, I guess as I've gotten older, I gravitate more towards the hope and the optimism of Superman. But to your point, like, so many of the Superman villains, I think, got kind of a makeover or a shot in the arm from Superman the Animated Series. With obviously they created Livewire for the show, Volcana, people like that. Plus, Toyman got I mean, if you look at Toyman in the comics, he's like a chubby, balding guy in a like pinstripe suit, and create this sort of almost like this creepy looking puppet guy and give him such like a crazy backstory where his father was, killed by the mob or was sent to jail as sort of the fall guy for the mob. As it's wild. And not only just for the episodes themselves, but also the great job they did at kind of giving a shot in the arm to some of those existing characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lex Luthor is just perfect in that entire series.
Yeah, Clancy Brown's one of the he's I think he might be on the voice acting Mount Rushmore for us for the DCAU. He's way up there as just he as of yet, and obviously we haven't reviewed every Superman or every Justice League that he's been in, but he never gives a bad performance, man. He's a picture perfect Lex Luthor, as you said.
It's very true. You got Conroy as Batman, Hamill as Joker, and you definitely got him as Luthor as like the sort of staples of the voice of their characters. Like, you can't ever imagine them in any other voice other than those ones. And like reading a comic book, you always read it in Clancy Brown's voice or Conroy's voice, and it's crazy to think that I know how much relatability these characters have got to. It's mad.
Now,
absolutely.
Like Scott said before we shoot off, we also want to give you guys a chance to drop any big events that you guys have coming up, your newest episode, or anything you guys got coming up. We'd love for you guys to plug it and inform our viewers and listeners.
Absolutely. Well, you guys can always find us on social media. Liam is actually our Twitter, the guy that runs our Twitter page, so you can check him out. He does the tweeting from there. That's at DCAU Review. And then, as you guys already plugged, thankfully, our Instagram, we have at DCAU Review as well. Twitter, we do a lot of discussing. Liam does a lot of discussing with fans, fan theories. We do a lot of interaction with the community of the DCAU brings, but he also talks about whatever else is going on in the standard comics fair, or what's happening on the CW shows, or even live action movies, and so our conversation goes beyond just the normal scope of DCAU. There, we tend to stay on more DCAU centric things with our Instagram, but we'll talk about We've been talking about the collectibles. Certainly excited about the reviews this week for the solicits from DC Comics with the reveals for the Batman Who Laughs and the Vampire Batman and all those figures based on the Adventure Continues line. Also some of the statues and stuff that they've just recently released based on some of those sort of Batman animated series designs. But yeah, you can follow us there. We also release clips of upcoming episodes on our Instagram, and we also do Flashback Black Fridays to kind of fill you in on some of the old episodes, because we're coming up close to 100 episodes here already.
Yes,
it's crazy. I'm super excited. Liam, do you want to reveal what our 100th episode is going to be right here exclusively on the DC Collectibles?
Well, sure. We'll give you guys a scoop.
Perfect.
Yeah, for our 100th episode, which will be, as of now, knock on wood, nothing changes. The first week of April, the first Saturday in April, episode 100, we will in fact be reviewing an episode we talked about briefly. That is Star-Crossed. That's
brilliant.
The 3-part Justice League epic is going to be our 100th episode. So we're very excited and looking forward to reviewing that soon.
And then next week we're covering, we're going to do a review for the month of, the end of February and the month of March. We're going to be doing what we call an Elseworld Superman month. So we're covering non-DCAU animated versions of Superman. So we're kicking it off next week with a review of the soon-to-be-released Red Sun Superman movie coming out next week. So we're super excited about that. We're going to watch that and then release our thoughts on that as it comes out. So we're excited to see how they've adapted that into animated form.
Perfect. There's a lot of stuff coming up. Scott, any final words?
Well, I want to say massive thanks to you guys for coming on. It's been an absolute blast, and me and Tyler love any opportunity to talk DCAU. To be honest, it's been an absolute blast to talk to two people that know so much and love the series. And very timely, as we've said, with the new release of the comic and new figures.
Absolutely.
So yeah, looking forward to picking them up, and you'll definitely have to come back on the show sometime.
Yes,
absolutely. We'd love to have you guys on our show as well sometime. We've talked a little bit about that with you and with a couple of the other DCAU content creators out there. We'd really like to start doing that in the future of starting to have our own guests on our shows and reviewing stuff with us. So
that would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Go for it.
Yeah, we want to have a bunch of special correspondents. We're gonna call them like on the Daily Show or something, where we bring them on. And we're gonna have a big panel, or one of those cable news shows. We're just gonna have a panel of 8 people yelling over each other. But no, seriously, though, we definitely would love that. We thank you so much for having us, and we definitely want to return the favor and have you guys on our show sometime.
Well, we'd love that.
Sounds great.
I'm just happy that we were able to get off when we did, because I feel like we could have been talking about episodes forever, because it's fun to talk to people that are so knowledgeable and that respect the stuff. And even the episodes you guys picked, that most people would never pick those episodes or even know they exist or even watch them. So the fact that you guys even know that stuff, it's a lot of fun. And also that you guys had similar upbringings, that also helps.
Yeah.
If you guys want to hang out, we'll go to a Comic-Con, comic book store, watch a couple of Batman.
Yes. We'll have to fly out to Baltimore.
Sounds good.
Well, again, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor. We know that you guys are busy, and the fact that we got an hour and 13 minutes out of you guys is pretty amazing. And it's also amazing that we were able to stop with all the stuff we were talking about. And we really do hope that we are able to get you guys back on and just talk about any and all DCAU news. It's a lot of fun. And again, if you guys are not following, please check them out at DCAU Review. They have a link where you can find where their podcast is. They have their own website, and they produce high quality content, and they're very knowledgeable. So it's actually very enjoyable to listen to. There's a lot of people online that have no idea what they're doing, but they still get listens and views. So I think that these guys deserve a lot of support because what they're doing is really good. And again, DC Figures and Collectibles, thank you for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Goodbye.